Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Too Many Cards and Dice. I'm your host, Ben, and for this video, I'm going over the kindest of group hug decks, Nekusar the Mindreaver. And he's group hug because he helps everyone draw cards. The fact that they all take damage while drawing cards, well, that's beside the point. He's group hug, and that's the argument I will stand by. Now, for those unaware, he is a zombie wizard, both powerful tribes on their own. In Grixis colors, black, red, blue. He's a 2/4. He helps everyone draws extra cards and ensures that opponents take damage for drawing cards. So as you may imagine, there's lots of that nonsense in here. Speaking of nonsense, one popular dirty trick with Nekusar is Sigil of Sleep. Either on Nekusar itself or on any of the other creatures that deal damage for a draw, you end up bouncing pretty much entire board states to people's hands as they draw cards. Another dirty trick involves Infect. Glistening Oil, honestly, is probably the worst choice for the black mana cost, but it has the best art. There are other options if you prefer Infect. Phyresis, Tainted Strike is an instant, gives an Infect for one turn for basically a big wheel. And then I think it's Grafted Exoskeleton, and there may be others. But if you give Nekusar or another creature Infect, as people draw, they get poison counters, and at 10 poison counters, they die. This is a newer dirty trick, and this is the fancy trick. For Oger Oxenil, the Deepest Might, you don't care about trample, you don't care about 4/4, you don't care that he's a god. You do care about if a red source you control deals an amount of non-combat damage less than Oger Oxenil's power to an opponent, it deals the power instead. We have several red permanents that deal 1 damage per card drawn, which is now suddenly 4 damage per card drawn. And that is why he is in here. You know, to make dumb things dumber. Sunder. Now, Sunder, even though it doesn't technically destroy all the land, it effectively destroys all the land by bouncing it all to all the controller's hands. This is best in response to your own windfall or windfall effect, just to get rid of them all and force the draw of many cards. Some people will get very upset at this card, much as they will get upset at cards like Armageddon or Cataclysm. But such is life. It's a dirty trick, and it's here for a reason. I found a delicious stout to drink with this video. All right, Peer into the Abyss. Costs 7 to cast. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. Yeah, it rounds up, but you don't care. This should kill one player. Just flat out, if you have Nekusar or another one of the draw, take damage cards in play. This just removes one player. All right, speaking of cards that deal damage, we start with Cataract Parasite. 1 damage, but only if you have a red permanent, like your commander, like Oger Oxenil, or however that's pronounced, and several other cards. Recently reprinted in, I don't know, the Duskmorn Precon, the black-red one. All right, another card out of that series is a Razorkin Needlehead. Red permanent. No one cares about first strike. Everyone loves that when opponents draw cards, they take damage. Stormfist Crusader. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card and loses 1 life. Oh no, they get more cards. But this compounds with everything else, and they take damage. Phyrexian Tyranny. Black, red, blue, and I think it's been reprinted recently, probably in a list or in a commander deck. But if not, it's really a niche card, so you should be able to pick it up fairly cheaply. Whenever a player draws a card, they lose 2 life unless they pay 2 mana. This includes you, but you should have such an advantage over all your opponents. It should not matter. Underworld Dreams, baby. Dark Writ this out on turn 1 or just wait. Regardless, it's an enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they take a point of damage. Fate Unraveler. It's like Underworld Dreams. It just costs 1 more, and it doubles as a 3/4 creature. Spiteful Visions. This one uses hybrid mana. There, at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws a card. So yay, everyone draws more. And then whenever a player, to include yourself, draws a card, they take damage. Everybody gets more help. Everybody takes some damage. Your opponents should still be taking more than you. Breathstealer's Crypt. I do not believe this has seen a reprint, says Visions. Regardless, it's an enchantment for 2 blue-black. Whenever any player draws a card, they reveal the card. And if it's a critter, the player takes pays 3 life or discards the card. I mean, this is a pretty creature-light deck, so you can easily afford it. Sheoldred the Apocalypse. Yes, folks, I have one, and this is just the start of this lovely deck. Over the last 30 years, I have opened many packs, and sometimes I get lucky. I win the lottery, which is how I ended up with Sheoldred the Apocalypse. Whenever I draw a card, gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. Really, really extra funny when they're drawing 7 at a time. Ob-Nixilis, the Hate Twisted. Here we have a Planeswalker that is basically Underworld Dreams with bonus abilities. In this case, killing creatures to 4 straws. Psychosis Crawler. Power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your hand. So there's a brief moment in time where it will die when you're wheeling and you've discarded your hand. But whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. Niv-Mizzet the Firemind. Like pretty much all Niv-Mizzet variations, this one lets you deal damage. In this case, it's whenever you draw a card. You deal damage to a creature or player, and you can tap them to draw a card, which doesn't matter. Arcane Denial. I know some folks really hate this card because your opponents draw. I love it because ideally the drawing is bad. And you get a draw out of it as well. In a pinch, you can counter your own spell to draw 3. Yawgmoth's Will. Remember when I said I've gotten lucky pack pools? Here's one of them. Pay 3. Until end of turn, I can play. All of my stuff basically has flashback. Which doesn't sound like much till you see some of the other cards in the deck. All right, Howling Mine. During each player's draw phase, the player draws an additional card. Cammy of the Crescent Moon. It's a Howling Mine on legs. Master of the Feast. Each opponent draws a card at the beginning of my upkeep. Oh, more damage. And it's a 5/5 flyer. Planeswalker, Jace Beleren. Each player draws a card. I really don't care about the rest of it. Dictate a Crucifix. Flash this in at the beginning of each player's draw step. They draw an additional card. Fevered Visions. Beginning of each player's end step, they draw a card. Then, if they're the opponent and have 4 or more cards in hand, they take extra damage. Horn of Greed. Play a land, draw a card. Temple Bell. I tap it. Each player draws a card. There's a theme here. Remember when I said Nekusar's group hug? Well of Ideas. When it enters, I draw 2 cards. At the beginning of each other player's draw step, they draw an additional card. At the beginning of my draw step, I draw 2. I mean, 6 mana is a lot, but for what this card does, especially in Nekusar, it's well worth it. Prosperity with the old portal art. Yeah, it's an X spell, and you may not get a very big X, but you'll get an X. And that matters, as you'll see. Burning Inquiry. Each player draws 3, then discards 3 at random. It is amazing how that random clause will really screw people up and make them upset. Vision Schemes. Instant speed. Each player draws 2 cards. Urza's Guilt. Sorcery. Each player draws 2, then discards 3 of their choice, then loses 4 life. I mean, you're drawing. Speaking of draw, Forced Fruition. You're not surprised to see this here, are you? Whenever an opponent plays a spell, that player draws 7 cards. In reality, this rarely goes off. It just eats removal. But I'm good with it. Winds of Change. Lovely portal art. I got to tell you, as an aside, if your turn 1 is Mountain, Winds of Change, you can make people scoop and just quit the game because of that new hand. Which is not why this is in here, but I will not hesitate to make that play if given the opportunity. Anyhow, you force a reshuffle, which is a whole bunch of draw. Jace's Archivist. Pay blue and tap him. You Windfall. And that is very potent, especially alongside Sunder. Wheel of Fortune. Another great card from yesteryear. The Wheel, which all wheels get their name. You pay 3, everyone discards and draws 7. Magus of the Wheel, named after Wheel of Fortune. I mean, discard hand, draw 7. Whirlpool Warrior. At first, you draw, and then everybody windfalls. Well, not exactly windfalls. They count the number of cards in their own hands, and then they draw that many cards as they shuffle the rest in. There it is, Windfall. Discard your hand, then draws card equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. If you play Sunder in response to this, you force everyone to draw a ridiculous amount of cards, and there's very little they can do about it. And it is hysterical. Molten Psyche. All right, each player shuffles the cards from his or her hand into the library, then draws that many cards. Metalcraft. If I control 3 or more artifacts, Molten Psyche deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards that player has drawn this turn. In all honesty, it can be difficult to reach Metalcraft in this particular version of the deck. So this is mostly here just to force the draws. But revamping this deck for more artifacts probably rocks. It could do a lot of good and then more reliably trigger Metalcraft. Teferi's Puzzle Box. I've got the old Visions art, but this has been reprinted several times and is a key part of many Niv Mizzet decks, the Nekusar deck, and anything else that wants people to draw cards. Because at the start of every player's draw step, they draw 1 and then put all their cards on the bottom and then draw that many cards. Or they put all their cards on the bottom and draw that many cards and then draw 1. It doesn't matter. They still draw a whole bunch, and that's the goal. Wheel and Deal. Here we have another instant for 4. Any number of target opponents discard their hand and draw 7 cards. And then you cantrip off of it. Lovely. Reforge the Soul. On rare occasions, I miracle into this. On even rarer occasions, also known as other decks, I deliberately set up the top so I can miracle into it. Regardless, it's Wheel of Fortune for extra mana and arguably better art. Korvath's Fury. I don't know about this card. I mean, it costs 5. I'm choosing friend or foe. Each friend discards all cards from their hand, then draws that many cards, plus 1. And then if I call them a foe, they deal damage equal to the number of cards in their hand. If I've got one of them draw damage cards like Nekusar in play, I'm going to make everyone my friend, but they're not. It's like Mean Girls or frenemies if you are still in middle school or recall middle school. All right, Memory Jar. You pay 5, you get an artifact that you can sack. Each player sets their hand down and then draws 7 new cards, and then they have till the end of turn to play them. If not, they discard them and they pick up the old hand and put it back in their hand. The goal being draw 7. Time reversal. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library and draws 7. An expensive draw 7 here might be better served as something else. Time Spiral, another really, really good pack pool. I'm paying 6. Everybody's shuffling their graveyard in hand and drawing 7, but I get to untap 6 lands, which should ensure a victory. Waste Not. This is just a fun card. It's an enchantment for black 1 that cares about what your opponents are discarding. As I recall, there's a black zombie for black and 4 that cares about the same stuff, but also costs $15 or more. So I don't have one, but if you have it, add it. I do own, however, Glinthorn Buccaneer. He really loves it when I discard, and he doesn't care what I discard because he's dealing damage. I've also got a Surly Badger Saw. He also cares about specifically the card types I discard because he's either going to buff or get treasures or fight things. Ideally, I'm getting treasures out of the deal. All right. Archfiend of Ifnir. Whenever you discard, I put -1/-1 counters on each creature. So a wheel will potentially let me sweep the field. All right. Obviously, that's not the entirety of the deck. I have the rest of it to include cards that I love to Yawgmoth's Will. Dark Ritual. We know it. We love it. Pay 1, get 3. Cabal Ritual. Pay 2, get 3 or 5. Probably 5. Seething Song. Pay 3, get 5. Lotus Petal. Pay nothing, get 1. Sol Ring. Dimir Signet. Izzet Signet. Rakdos Signet. Felwar Stone. Chromatic Lantern. Because look, if you're playing 3 or more colors, add the lantern. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. Decanter of Endless Water. I mean, it's more in here for the adding mana of any color, although no maximum hand size is kind of nice because that plays well with Windfall. Lands. We got some non-basics here. Miko Koro, Center of the Sea, draws cards. Command Tower makes any color. Reflecting Pool, any color. Forbidden Orchard, any color. City of Brass, any color, but you take damage. Mana Confluence, any color, you take life loss. Crumbling Necropolis, or if you prefer auf Deutsch, Zerfallender Necropolis. Anyhow, enters the battlefield tapped, provides 1 of 3 colors. Crypt of the Eternals. Not bad. Xander's Lounge. This is the only official tri-land I own. And I got it expressly to put in this deck. Enters tapped, but gives you all 3 colors. And if I could search up specific land types, it would be huge. All right, Evolving Wilds. Terramorphic Expanse. Halimar Depths. I like that card. And then a bunch of basic lands. What are we looking at here? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 islands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 swamps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mountains. There you have it, folks. Nekusar the Mindreaver, group hug, because everybody draws. There's at least 1 more artifact creature recently printed that you want to jam in here. Or consider, because he's another one of the, whenever an opponent draws, they take damage cards. So, If you have any input or comments that you'd like to provide about Nekusar here, or anything else, by all means do so. And in addition, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. And that is all I've got. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend. Cheers.